Hey everyone out there, I'd like to do a review since Friday the 13th just recently came out. I'd like to do a review of the first movie. Before I start off, I just want to state that Friday the 13th is my absolute favorite horror movie. I've actually met Adrian King, who was the star of Friday the 13th. I met Betsy Palmer, who was Mrs. Voorhees in the first film. I met Ari Lehman, who is the guy who played Jason, who comes out of the water at the end of the movie. And I've met Harry Manfredini, who composed the music pretty much for all of them. Um, it's my favorite horror movie. So Friday the 13th technically is a ripoff of Halloween. I mean, it has the same elements as Halloween. It's a bunch of teenagers isolated somewhere, and a killer is stalking them and killing them. We as the audience don't see the killer. We see, a lot of the times we'll see through the eyes of the killer. We don't find out. Well, in Halloween we knew who the killer was all along, but in Friday the 13th you don't find out who the killer is until the end of the movie. And even at the end of the movie, you're not even really sure who it is until she actually flips out and tells you. Friday the 13th was different from Halloween because Halloween went more for the scare tactic than the gore factor. Um, which is a good thing and a bad thing. I mean, Halloween scared you. It scared you. Friday the 13th went for the gore factor, like I said, and it got cut because of that, but now you can see it uncut on DVD and Blu-ray. But I'm not really sure. I can't really explain why I like Friday the 13th over Halloween. I think because Halloween, since it went for the scare factor, that it was a little bit boring to watch after you've seen it a few times, because it's not going to scare you after the first few times. Friday the 13th, on the other hand, though, it's just an entertaining movie with stupid people and drugs and nudity. The remake, on the other hand, you can watch my review on that on YouTube, but the remake didn't know what the fuck they were doing. They really fucked up a lot, and anyway, that's not the point. Friday the 13th also, it had a few elements. Well, it had the one element that Halloween hadn't really done, and except for Carrie, I don't think it had been done before that, which was the scare ending, which wasn't in the script. The ending when Jason comes out of the water and pulls her into the water. I mean, that scene, even though it didn't scare me when I first saw it. I saw it on VHS 10 years ago, but that scared people. That scared a lot of people because no one knew it was coming. This was before the cliched last scare in a horror movie, so I mean, it wasn't something that had been done a lot. So that was one element of why that movie was so good. I also think Friday the 13th was so good. It was so good, and it spawned off, the biggest horror franchise ever. I mean, the movie had 11 films counting Freddy vs. Jason, and that's an amazing number. I mean, Nightmare on Elm Street only hit 8 if you count Freddy vs. Jason. I mean, that is a really impressive number. Friday the 13th is one of the most well-known horror movies in the world, and I think that had a lot to do with, well, first of all, they had an unconventional killer in the first movie with Mrs. Voorhees. I mean, it was a woman and a mother, and that's not something that was normally seen. Normally, killers were males, and then the following movies spawned Jason. I mean, and he comes out of nowhere. Even Sean Cunningham, the guy who made the first movie, didn't expect Jason to go anywhere. He was just kind of thrown in there at the last minute. He wasn't in the script. And now, Jason is like an icon along with Freddy. I mean, that's why they did Freddy versus Jason. Because Friday the 13th developed such an icon of a killer, or a character, and that's why Part 5 didn't work when they took out the element of Jason and put in somebody else in his mask, and then you find out that it's not him. That's why a lot of people hate that movie. But I want to go on on file saying that Friday the 13th Part 5 is way better than the fucking remake. I never thought I'd say that about another movie. But those are my feelings on the first movie. I mean, if you want to see a really good horror movie, see Friday the 13th. If you want to see what has happened to horror movies, see the remake. You're gonna be disappointed when you see the remake, so I'd stick with the original.